Welcome. Welcome to the Jennifer Munson podcast. You are my first official guest, Marley. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. What a big honor for me to get to be number one.
Number one. That can't change. So I'm going to do a short little intro on who Marley is and why I have her here on my podcast. And I'm just going to read the bio from off your website. We've shortened it a little bit, but Marley is a naturopath and a neuro trainer and a brain health expert with over 20 years of helping people heal from the inside out. Marley specializes in the powerful connection between the body, mind, and soul, guiding people through chronic stress, anxiety, and a number of other issues. I personally know her because of autism in my life, and I'll share that later. But through her detox, stress, mind, and renewal method, Marley helps people move from chaos to calm, which we all need more of that in our lives. She uses practical tools, brain optimization, and deep inner renewal. She believes the body is designed to heal, and I believe that too, when given the chance. And through her master classes and her podcast, she's bringing that hope and transformation to people around the world. That's a mouthful, but so exciting. I'm so excited to have you here to really educate people and inform people that there's so much more available to, especially to us as believers. We both, claim God is our one and only true God that we believe in. We believe in healing. We believe in healing through deliverance and inner healing, which is what I focus on. But I also believe in God's design, that our body was designed by God to heal itself, and that there are a number of ways we can do that with the brain neurofeedback and the neuro optimal being a great option. So welcome. Do you want to share a short intro of how you got to where you are today and why you're doing what you're doing?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you, Jennifer, so much. This is just really exciting to get to talk to you today. I like watching you online, and of course, anytime I connect with you at a ladies' event,
Yeah.
it's awesome. So yeah, I think the Lord orchestrated us to connect for many reasons. So for me personally, I kind of had a lifetime of chronic health challenges. I was raised in a home with toxic mold and had immune issues and focus issues and learning struggles and stress struggles all growing up. And then I had a significant concussion when I was 15. And following that, I developed anxiety, depression, and panic disorder. And at that time, there wasn't much out there to understand that. And I was in a very alone place, but thank God I had been given a Bible, and that was a source of perseverance for me to continue to. And, I didn't have a pastor or youth group that I fit in, and it was just me and the word. And so thank God for that it's transformative and powerful. And there's so many things that I look back on now where I used to cry out to God to heal me, to renew my mind, give me the mind of Christ. And there was always a disconnect. And it wasn't until really just a few years ago that I realized that the mind and the brain are not the same. And you can't have positive thoughts like the mind of Christ would have if your brain doesn't work very well. So we are body, mind, or body, soul, and spirit. And I think we have to address those things when we're going through any type of struggle, trauma, or in need of healing, and that we got to connect the dots. So it's been a lifetime of figuring it out. I went to, college and worked on my master's and had a family when they told me not to have kids because I ended up contracting Lyme disease in 1999 after a series of tick bites. And at that time, when I lived in the state of Oklahoma and went to a specialist, they told me there's no such thing as Lyme disease in the state of Oklahoma. And so I was left untreated, and it triggered chronic Lyme, which led to fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, autonomic nervous system dysfunction, and over 20 years of either being in bed or on the couch. And during that diagnosis is when they told me not to have children thank God he blessed me with two amazing boys, because I know for a fact that as sick as I was, if I was not a mom and had a bigger purpose to live beside myself, I wouldn't have continued with my life and my suffering. Even though I knew that was wrong,
Yeah.
you don't get it unless you get it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so since I have I encourage people that come into my clinic or get on a video conference with me all the time. They don't, unless you get it, you don't get it, right? But to use your test to be your testimony and turn your pain to purpose. And so finally I'm through that valley of the shadow of death where I had to just hang on, and I can actually give a hand down for people that are kind of in the pit now and help them and direct them with tools and encouragement, and tell them that it's not over. Because a lot of people, they can have an acute illness and feel pretty bad, but when you've got decades of chronic illness where you're fighting for survival every day, I know it sounds melodramatic to some, but like I say, you don't get it unless you get it. And so now to kind of be on that other side and be able to encourage people, I can read their mail, because not very many people can articulate, therapists included and doctors included, what they're really struggling with and how they're feeling and how they're processing life around them, and even their own interoceptive clues in their body, trying to make sense of it all when you actually have an issue with your nervous system and your brain, and to give people the tools to move away from those things and actually give opportunity to heal. Because that's a naturopathic principle, that the body knows how to heal. It's innately
Yeah.
designed to heal itself if we stop the wrongdoing and we get out of the body's way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I forgot about how much we have in common, because Lyme disease is not something I talk about a lot, but I was diagnosed with Lyme disease in 2009. And I was a prodigal at that time. I was not walking with the Lord, and I was determined to not walk with the Lord. And I had so much church hurt and all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Lyme disease that brought me back to the Lord. When I was diagnosed, I'm a single mom of two boys, and I was just laid off because it was during the recession. And I thought, don't have my job, don't have my money, don't have my health. I know what he is trying to do. And I told God, it's not going to work. You're not going to get me back. And I remember laying on the couch. And I think one of the things with Lyme disease and other illnesses like that is, at least for me, I didn't look sick.
Right.
And that made it harder, because
Mm-hmm.
people would say, what do you mean you can't hear me? What do you mean you don't know the word the? Like, these things would just be missing from my brain. And I was severely depressed because I couldn't do simple things like pick up my baby. I would just get stuck. And it was just so painful, but it looked okay. And so I totally understand the mindset of what's the purpose of living, but you have these boys. And I ended up giving my life back to the Lord through that, which is amazing. And then, not well, my health didn't all of a sudden change because I gave my life back to the Lord, but I had hope. I had hope again. And then I got into natural health and naturopathy and all the things. And so, but that's not how we connected. We actually connected because I was on TikTok, just being a regular TikTok user. But at this particular time, my son, who has been diagnosed with autism, high functioning, but when it comes to social skills, he really was at a level 0, and just did not possess them. And so we had been doing occupational therapy twice a week, every week, for years. But he got to a place where he was suicidal, and to the point that police showed up at my house. And there I am, like, wait a second, how is my kid here? And I don't even know that he's in this place. And so I started looking for resources, and I'm not finding any, because someone needs to understand autism. They understand what he's saying when he's saying it. Very, very, very literal. And then they need to be able to understand the spiritual side of it. And it's hard to find someone who understands both those things, in my experience locally. And so in the midst of that, and I'm talking about like on that day, I'm just on TikTok, and I'm really sad because my son is so sad that he doesn't want to live, and how do you handle that as a mom? And so I'm just on TikTok, and I believe God placed the video in front of me because it certainly wasn't by anything I was searching. You know, I only searched for Christian content, and that was it. The video that came up was a mom who had a boy who was diagnosed with autism, and I think he was like 8 or something like that. And she actually was doing a video of him receiving brain neurofeedback treatment. And so people are commenting, what is he doing? And why is this a big deal? You know, it doesn't look like a big deal, what's happening in the video. He's just sitting there, and I think he was drawing or something. And she said, you know, when you go into this session, you fill out this form, you answer these questions. How does he this? How does he this? How does he handle this? And then you go into the session. He gets 30 minutes of treatment, and then you fill out the form again, and right there in 30 minutes the answers change. Like it was instantaneous, the improvement. And I'm like, wow, what is this called? So she explains it. I Google local provider in my area. I found 2 providers, and I asked the Lord which one, and he brought me to you. And then we set up the appointment and was there, I think, within days, and did the same exact thing. And I think I was thinking about this before we met today, how there's so many options available, right? How do you know which one to choose? Which one do you invest into your time and your money and your resources? And for me, the biggest differentiator is that form. You cannot deny, when I'm asking my child, who's a teenager, he's not a little kid making up an answer, how do you feel when this happens? Or do you want to share some of the questions? Because I don't remember, because it's been a year now. It was October of last year. Some of the questions that we filled out, and he had the session, and we came back, and it was so drastically different that as a teenager, he could be like, he could say, this is how I feel. I feel so different. And it was like, it's a fact that it helped him in 30 minutes. How could I not use this resource to help my son come out of this? And so for me, it was, yes, prayer, yes, deliverance. I did have someone get with me, and we laid hands on him and prayed. And we also did the brain neurofeedback daily for 30 days. And now he's been in school. He wasn't in school for 6 years. And I think the thing you love the most about this testimony is he didn't even want to take the trash out. He didn't want to walk to the end of the driveway. That's how much social anxiety he had. And there's no one walking around my neighborhood. No one's hanging outside, really. And now he's in school, and he hadn't been in school for 6 years. Yeah. So can you share some of the
praise
questions
God so much for that
form?
Yeah, on the intake form. Yeah, that gives me goosebumps hearing it again. And first of all, your son is just so precious.
Amazing.
Just he is an amazing called of God man to do great things, and just the sweetest guy. So on those intake forms, so let me be really clear about this system that we use, and it is neurooptimal. The brain is so powerful, and our system does not require any QEEG or brain map, is what we call it. And those can be helpful, but it is a snapshot in time. And so somebody might show a particular bunch of activity, low activity, high activity, different regions of the brain on a QEEG, and have different symptoms than the next person that shows the same thing on that test. Just like if you go and you have a thyroid panel, and all of your numbers are where they should be, as the standard female of your age should look, but you still have symptoms. Tests are helpful, but then they can be a little bit self-sabotaging at the same time, because you're like, well, I'm healthy, but you're really not. And what matters in those intake forms, particularly what Isaiah had experienced, was it's how the brain perceives. And that's what matters. We're not aligning ourselves to what normal is. And, I joke about it, and other neuroscientists, including Dr. Amen, who I've trained and studied under, says that normal is just a town in Illinois. And it's what your brain perceives that matters. And so with our brain training system, we are brain optimization, and it is we do a tracking tool, which Isaiah had done, where he can kind of rate himself. Here's what I feel, here's what's bothering me today, and then you do a session and then you check back in. Are those sensations still remaining? Can you give it a number? Do you rate, is it at a 10 out of 10 overwhelming, and now you're at like a 2 out of 10, I feel better? So like, that's what we do. It is based on user experience. And with that being said, who can train? Anybody with a brain. And I particularly love how effective it is for people with mood disorders, anxiety, depression, autism. Now, the thing is with your son, I do like that whole story behind him not being able to take the trash to the curb. Now, why is that relevant and why is that important? Well, when you are in a stress response, as like he was in, and a lot of people that are neurodivergent, there's inflammatory things going on in the brain, and there's patterns, and there's learned wiring in the brain that tells you what? I'm not safe. I'm not safe in the world. I'm not safe in my own body. And so even though your neighborhood's safe, the boogeyman is not at the curb waiting for your son when you drop the trash. His brain perceives that that is not the case. And so that's where things like limbic impairment come into play. And if you understand the nervous system, or if you, I don't know how deep you want to go into this, Jennifer, and if we're going to have further discussions about it, but we can talk about it kind of more on how the nervous system can regulate or not regulate stress responses. But in your son's case, he was stuck in overwhelm. His nervous system said, the world out there is dangerous. And that can be based on perceived threat or real threat. And when the limbic system is in the driver's seat, that's the emotional brain, and that's areas of the amygdala, which carries fear centers. Hippocampus carries your memories. And the upper regions of your brain, where you can make logical, conscious thought, where your eyes and your ears can show it's not noisy out here, there's not people everywhere, there's nobody that's going to be violent towards me, that isn't working. So even though logically you can tell your son or yourself or your significant other, there's nothing to worry about, that part of the brain is not allowing that logic to come into play, because the emotional brain is in the driver's seat. And so when we train on the neurooptimal system, we allow the brain to see itself, the areas that it's stuck in. And what that training does is it interrupts persistent, consistent cortical patterns. You actually wear EEGs on your head. So you're getting a real-time interpretation of what your brain is doing, and it allows the brain to use that feedback to kind of talk back to itself in the central nervous system to downregulate or upregulate as it need be, because what we want to do is be in the present moment. And when we're stuck in a trauma loop or a trauma response, or the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flop states of our nervous system, that we are perceived that things are not safe or overwhelmed, or people are against me, or I'll never be able to heal from this illness, and God's not hearing me, I'm not hearing from God, like all the things that our brain gets stuck in with ruminating thoughts or trauma loops. This system helps the brain see it. And because our emotional brain is trying to get our attention and protect us, it helps the emotional brain move away from discomfort, because that's what it's there for. It's designed to keep us alive. Anxiety is actually a good thing. It's just that when it gets out of control, that it's not a good thing.
Right.
So what that training does is it helps the brain see areas that it needs to self-correct. It could be a block. It could be a stress pattern. It's just putting a mirror in front of your brain for your brain to see in the mirror what it wants to self-correct. And when it can see it, it can move away from those symptoms, behaviors, ruminating thoughts, whatever it is where it's stuck. And then that's where this part of the brain goes, oh, this is working better. You have better focus. You have a better stress regulation. There's so many things that it makes better because it is a brain optimization system.
Yeah. I want to share some of the things that it helps with. Now there is a much longer list, but anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADHD, autism, learning disabilities, substance abuse recovery, grief and loss, and so much more. As someone who has gone through domestic violence and had PTSD, I think we've even talked about the ACE score, which is, well, I was looking up what that stood
Adverse
for.
childhood experiences.
Yeah, so it's a 10 questionnaire and you fill it out, and the higher number, to me, my interpretation is the more trauma that you've been through. I'm a 9 out of 10, which is of course extremely high. And so when we brought this machine home, because that is an option, I used it as well, even though I wasn't experiencing daily situations. For me, when I'm in a crowd, if someone looks like, my last abuser, that triggered something in me. And I was even shocked how that triggered me, where I couldn't even breathe. I had a full blown panic attack for the first and only time in my life, but I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I think when we met with you for the first time, and you probably didn't say it this way, but this is what I heard, almost as if it made it easier for my brain to receive what was about to happen. But it was almost, I think what I perceived or received was that there are neuro pathways in your brain that either are not being stimulated, or they're dormant, or they're not working right. And then after this treatment, it stimulated it. Like, that was my broken down dumb, if there was a neuro optimal for dummy explanation, that's would be my version of it. Because I want to make sure that people understand, and maybe I'm moving ahead or moving too quickly, but I want people to really understand what it is, what happens in an actual session, how simple it is, how you're not laying in a machine like an MRI. Like, it's nothing like that. Right. Yeah. But I would think if someone who has no idea what we're talking about and what you're offering, they would imagine, okay, what does this look like? How often do I have to go? How many times does it take to see results? All the things. So should we back up to what it actually looks like if someone contacted you, and what the process looks like?
Sure. Yeah, we can unpack that. So with this neurofeedback system, there are 5 sensors. You put 2 on either side of your head here, and then you put ear clips on, and you put another little one on your earlobe. The one on your earlobe closes the cortical circuit because it is emitting electricity. Your brain, just like your heart, EKG, EEGs do your brain. And then the ones on the tops of your ear are taking out the EMF and all the electrical activity. And then the ones that do the readings are here, and it's doing your entire brain. Your brain is like a hologram. It's constantly firing. And so it's detecting that in real time. And what it does is it detects any cortical shifts. There's a little algorithm formula. It's a mathematical process in the software. And it's looking at the duration, the intensity, and the frequency of the shifts of each oscillation of your brain. And then it comes back to the user. Basically, you're going to have these things put on your head. You can do it yourself. This system is designed for people with learning disabilities and a traumatic brain injury. So it is literally a plug and play thing. And it is available for you to use at home. Jennifer, you rented a system for 30 days. I think that everybody should have access to this technology. We're not new. We've been around for 25 years. but neurofeedback itself has been around for 100 years, but the neurooptimal system is the most advanced and the most in line with how the brain is actually designed than any other system. And what's really, really important about what our system is doing is that when people are already in overwhelm and you're chronically ill, or you've got occupational therapy to go to, and then you've got to go to a tutor, and then you got to go here and there, you're in overwhelm. And you always think you're broken, that there's something wrong. What's beautiful about Neurooptimal, it's used by high performance athletes as well as people that are really, really suffering, because all it does is just give your brain an invitation to learn from itself. There's no intervention. And so much of what we're doing when we're trying to heal and get out of our misery is intervention. And every time you add in a layer of intervention, your nervous system goes, mm, mm, and then it doesn't trust the process. It doesn't trust the practitioner. And you develop literal, because I did medical PTSD. I was diagnosed with medical PTSD. And so if you see somebody in a lab coat or drive by a doctor's office, your blood pressure goes up, right? That's a legit thing, that type of hypertension. They call it white coat hypertension.
Yes.
I
Yes.
had it, and kids have it, whether they can put a name to it or not. When you have those symptoms, and I don't know if you've read Body Keeps the Score, great read. For anybody who doesn't understand trauma, you should read it. But if you're struggling, read it in small doses, because it can be triggering. Your body is communicating, your brain is intercepting and trying to make sense of what's going on. And so if you've had a uncomfortable experience, like you said, you saw somebody that was like your assailant and your abuser in a crowd, and you had a panic attack. In the moment, you're probably like, what's going on? If we can be really kind to ourselves and to our brains, I say give your brain a name, because your brain will sometimes play tricks on you. Now, we need the mind of Christ, but many of us don't have the mind of Christ. We don't have renewed thinking. We have these ruminating thoughts. We have these trauma loops that we're stuck in. We have these low self-esteem. We have these shame things that we carry. It's an imprint that stays in our nervous system. And because if our limbic system is overactive, then it's the one in the driver's seat, right? Mm-hmm. It affects the executive function of our brain for good decision making, that says, you know what, I am safe, everything's okay. But when something triggers from the deep part of the limbic system, where your hippocampus and your amygdala are talking, you can have those symptoms and not understand it. One of the very best things that you can do is talk back to your brain and say to it, is this true? Is it absolutely true? It's the Byron Katie work. Great practice for mind renewal and brain training. And it's the take captive every thought that we're told to do in scripture, right? And line it up with God's word. Does it align with what God says about you? If it doesn't, just talk back to your brain. Give your brain a name. I call my brain Limby because of limbic system. And I take captive every thought. But when you have those kind of neurochemical floods that say you're not safe, just know, just the same way to diffuse an anxiety attack, the more you fight it, the more your nervous system is banging on your door. Pay attention to me. So if you can say, thank you, nervous system, for trying to protect me. I hear you. I see you. We're okay. And the more that you can integrate that and take the truth of it, that you can do all things, that healing, look to Jesus, the author and finisher of your faith. Like, I know you provide the scriptures. So to talk back to your brain, not just to talk to yourself, but do it as what is written and read and what God says about you. Use that as your brain rewire, and use Neurooptimal to help your brain see it, right? Because a lot of us can't integrate. We know that we need to be able to actively live and move and have our being in God's word, right? And the truth. But if you were like me and you did not work, because I had a confirmed traumatic brain injury, it's like there was a gap. I couldn't live what I believed. And it was because my nervous system was a hot mess. And I didn't understand that God had given me emotions and interoceptive clues, because whenever things were uncomfortable, I tried to avoid it and silence it and numb it. And the things that we do, like, I don't think people turn to things that are self-sabotaging and are bad for them because they're bad people and it's a moral failure.
Yep.
It's because your
Yep.
nervous system is dysregulated and you're trying to find peace in the wrong things. So if you can learn to take captive every thought and allow your nervous system and your brain to see, oh, this is just a pattern. And I somehow deep in my limbic system, it's talking, it's trying to get my attention. It's trauma that's not processed. It's stuck in the body. Those kind of things. The Lord, it's a naturopathic principle that when the Lord is ready, and I think this is one of the things that I love about from the Psalms when David says, "Search me and know me, Lord." That's the layers of the onion.
Mm-hmm.
That's the retracing principle that naturopathic medicine teaches, is that when the body has enough energy and vitality, it will go work on old wounds. It will go work on chronic illness. But when you're stuck in fight or flight, there's no energy left over for that.
Yes.
So it's so important to train the brain and calm and regulate the central nervous system to move away from that. And when I found Neuroptimal, it changed my life because I finally could live what I believed, because this part of my brain was working, and be able to level up and see blind spots about myself that I didn't know were there, and transform my relationships, transform my health, transform the way that I felt about my body. And you know what? When you have chronic pain and chronic fatigue and all the things, you kind of want to trade your body in for something else,
Feels
right?
like the enemy. Yeah.
But yeah, 100%. And so that those self-sabotaging thoughts that keep us stuck, those are the things that the training with this helps to like dissolve and move away from. And in your son's case, because he's a kid, there is I'm a little bit older. It's harder to teach an old dog new tricks, right? But the longer that we have those wagon ruts, and I say that those wagon ruts are that way because the more that we go down those neural pathways, the deeper they are, and they're the harder to get out of. But if you can see, I want to hop out of this wagon rut and I want to go down a new path, that is the rewire process. You prune away those things that don't serve you, and you lay down a new neural pathway, one that speaks God's word, that's true, that is about your deliverance and about your healing, and about now looking back, I'm no longer in this situation. Here's where I am. Lord, use me, send me, help me. Because I know so many people that are suffering, they know they're called for a bigger purpose than what they're living in. And it's what's holding them back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I might not have answered your question. I think you're asking me more about technology, the technical things about Neuroptimal. But
well, I want, before we end our session, I want to make sure people understand what the process is like. We start, you did share about, how it connects, but so I want them to get a visual of what it's like. But I want to say, in another way of applying this, is that when I met with a therapist last year, and a Christian licensed therapist, I met with them because of a situation I was going through. And he brought up, I'm known for having great faith. I'm known for knowing the scripture. I'm known for praying and believing and all the things, which are all true. And I believe I am who God says I am. I believe that he created me for a greater purpose and all the things. However, my actions weren't lining up with my belief. And it's the first time I learned about neuro pathways. And I believe a lot of our listeners, unless they've already met with me, may not know what a neuro pathway is, what it does, and how it can change. And with him in the therapy, there were things that we did to change those neuro pathways. So could you share, whether you have an example or if you just want to speak into how it happens? Let's say that I have someone that I'm working with that comes from a lifetime of, let's say, verbal abuse, right? So then what I would say when I meet with them is, what lie are you believing? And I explain to them, your brain is actually has a wire in there, because I'm trying to use plain terms, has a wire in there that is based on a lie. And that lie came from this foundation of lies, which was abuse. So yes, they can meet with me for healing and deliverance. And yes, there may be a demon attached that, but you still have to do the work to speak the truth. It's not always that your brain is set free, right? I'm going to bring up the slide, so this might help people as well. We are made up of, that's not the slide that I want. There we go. We are made up of our body, our soul, and our spirit, right? And so there are different parts of us that require different things to help us heal. And so you meet with me and we're dealing with the mind and will and emotions, but then you have what you offer that is going to help the brain support that healing that has happened, because life and death is in the power of the tongue. We know that. We know that we are to renew our mind. And for me, in the trauma that I lived through, I learned a coping mechanism, which was detaching. And so I would, when things felt like a threat, whether they were not a perceived threat, I detached myself from where I was and I went somewhere else in my brain. And I had to unlearn that coping mechanism. So do you want to speak into all of that a little bit, and what that neuro pathway, how that changes, and both spiritually and through what Neuro Optimal offers?
Sure. Well, without getting like too deep into neuroscience, but we know that neurons are thoughts that fire together, wire together. And so the more that you repeat and build habits, habits change over 21 days. A lot of brain training is similar. So it's like, if you don't feel like you're living in a way that you want to live, know that it takes discipline before motivation. Discipline is a choice. And sometimes, we have impulse control issues or we have motivation issues. Know that it's your brain. It's not that you're a bad person. It's not that you're not able and you're just like, well, I'm this way because. Don't blame the genetics. Make the choice. Know that the motivation follows because neurochemicals start to come to play when you're doing good, making good choices. What happens? Serotonin increases, oxytocin increases, dopamine increases. So you need to earn your rewards, you have to have vision. If you don't have vision for wellness or vision for healing or vision to be delivered, you don't have hope in that. And, without vision, we perish, right? So we've got to look to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, and do the work. Like you said, you could pray for people or they can go to a revival and feel so great because in the moment, the presence of God is there. All the neurochemicals are firing and it feels good. And then when you go back, you default.
Yep.
We got to disciple away from, what does that mean? Discipline. We got to move away from that, right? So Neuroptimal is just a tool in the toolkit. It's very, very powerful in what it can help the brain do. It doesn't do anything to the brain. It doesn't put anything in. It doesn't take anything out. It just allows the central nervous system to adapt and regulate and learn from itself. So what it's doing, it's detecting any cortical shifts 256 times a second. So what it does is it tells your brain what it just did, and is about to do in microseconds, 256 times a second, because that's as fast as Microsoft can process that information. And then when the brain sees it, what does it do? It helps it to become flexible and adaptable to quick change. We get stuck in rigid safety mechanism stress patterns because we experienced something that we didn't like. And if we listen to it and we know it, it's good. A lot of times we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, or 70 times 7, turn the cheek, all the things. I believe that there's some things about forgiveness and addressing and listening to our own nervous system in order for us to heal. Okay. And sometimes people get it wrong because they think that they should listen to somebody else and self-sabotage their own nervous system. If that person is not trustworthy, even if they're in the pulpit, you need to listen to your nervous system, because there's so much religious trauma out there and it breaks my heart. We need to get people back to where their brains and their nervous systems are back online. And that's what Neuroptimal helps it do. What it is to the user is just over a half an hour of listening to beautiful music that has little static sounds, clicks, and interrupts to it. That helps the brain become more flexible and adaptable to changes, and overall builds stress resilience. For years and years and years, the majority of my life, I did everything I could to avoid stress, and it made my stress resilience less. I became allergic to everything. I became overwhelmed by everything. I couldn't go to the grocery store because I couldn't handle the fluorescent lights. I couldn't handle the smells. I couldn't handle the people. I couldn't handle the movement because my nervous system was so overwhelmed. So thank God I had Instacart to deliver my groceries. Although it was before that, it was before Instacart, but you know what I mean? So it's not about avoiding stress. It's about building stress resilience. And that is where you have to work with the nervous system to build your window of tolerance to stress over a period of time. And that's why this Neuroptimal is considered brain training, not treatment. We're not a medical device. A medical device is about intervention, and your nervous system has had enough. So it's a gentle invitation to allow it to learn from itself. And it's such a simple, beautiful process. Like I said, it's meant for people with brain injuries and even kids that are on the spectrum. They might start out very, whether let's just say in general, if you have a dysregulated nervous system, you don't feel safe in your own body, you don't feel safe in your environment, there's this level of distrust, you know you're supposed to trust, but you don't. And it's just your brain trying to protect you. Once your brain has had the experience, you've ran a session, and you know what it's like, you build stress resilience because there's some familiarity to it. There's no bad maladaptive patterns that you've wired into your brain, right? So the more that you train, the more that you move away from those deep wagon ruts, and it helps the brain to rewire itself. It doesn't make the brain rewire itself. There's a big difference. So to me, it's the easy, passive, lazy backdoor approach to trauma resolution. And that's why it's such an effective tool. So my goal, Jennifer, would be to make it available to everybody. You can buy a system and own it yourself. It is cost prohibitive, but if you ever add up what you've spent on therapy and massage and acupuncture, all the things that we do that we try to help ourselves do, and invest in a system, or at least rent one like you did for 30 days and get to the point where you're out of the woods. Because when you brought your system back in 30 days, I remember you standing in the lobby of the clinic just saying, like, first of all, you didn't tell me it was as bad as it was when you picked up your system. You just kind of mentioned there was some things going on. You didn't tell me about the police. You didn't tell me about the ideation.
You know why?
You didn't
If I just
because I didn't. You probably didn't think I would let you take a machine.
It felt shameful.
Oh,
as
girl.
a Christian, well, I was a chaplain at the time, you know, and I help other people. It felt, which is wrong, you know, that is a lie from the enemy. But you know, you don't tell people that. You don't tell people, you know, who are you? Your son's doing. Oh, you must be a bad mom. You know, all of those lies. But you know what? I wanted to interject for a minute now to say, because I'm getting like a greater revelation of all the things, is God has had me speaking in the past few weeks about identity and how we were designed by God and formed by God's hand, and he designed us and wrote out all the days of our life before any of them came to be according to his word. And there was an identity that he gave us. And then we come into this world with generational sins and habits and traumas and all the things that life brings, and we then live in a false identity.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, what I do and what you do is bringing people back to the truth of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a way to help them. And both of the things that we offer are not band-aids. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
anything to be a band-aid, because that band-aid will come off and what's hidden will be revealed. Instead,
Right.
I believe God wants us to get to the roots of what's causing us to live out of this false identity and less than what God has. Our portion, our inheritance from heaven is abundance in every single area of our life. And
Mm-hmm.
we need to use the tools that God has given us, the resources that God has given us to be able to help people walk out their true identity in Christ. And I think
Mm-hmm.
in what I'm doing as I share with people about this option, and I've had multiple clients pursue this neuro optimal option and use it for their children and for themselves, and they love me so much, and that is what they say, for bringing this resource to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they see me. Yes, what we do helps them, but having this tool has been life changing, and I know that firsthand. And it's all about sharing what's available, and then
Mm-hmm.
it gives a testimony, right? It gives a
Yes.
testimony of what is available, and then what God has for you and what your portion is. Do you have any of your favorite testimonies that you like sharing in, when you speak to other people or when you're doing other podcasts and shows? Are there some favorites that you have that you like to share of transformations?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it is. If you look at our developers website, so I love this system so much that I work for the manufacturer of the system now. I'm a facilitator of the certification. I am a representative that sells the systems. I help other functional med doctors, therapists, even moms, because 75% of the people who buy this system are buying it for their kids, because mama bears get things done. They fix what's wrong,
Right.
right?
Well, and we see the value. There, to me,
Yeah.
when I heard how much it costs to rent it as a single mom, did I have that available? No. But my son's life is valuable
Yeah,
to
for
me, and
sure.
him
Investment.
living that life according to what's offered to him because of the blood of Jesus, I was willing to do whatever it took
Mm-hmm.
to make that happen because it's important to me. And I think that we sometimes, at least for me, when I was going through healing, it was, well, do you value the life
Mm-hmm.
that Jesus's blood paid for? And what are you willing to do? I'm willing to go and spend $8 on a fancy coffee multiple times a week. That's
Yeah.
not serving me. There's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with it. But if you take that money that I'm spending on that and I'm spending on this, and you add that all up, I'm doing those because they feel good, but are they changing me? No.
Yeah.
No. This is
No.
something that's getting to the
Right.
root.
Yeah. And my point, and it's what I wish I could tell my younger self, Jennifer, because I would have had a much better quality of life. I would have not had to medicate all through my kids' childhood just to show up for things,
Yes.
because all the meds, all the narcotics I took for pain, and the benzodiazepines that I had to take, they caused brain fog. They caused cognitive decline. Thank God for Instagram, because I wouldn't remember most of their childhood. But I needed to show up for my kids, and I was too sick to get out of bed. So if I would have had this technology 20 years ago, it would have been different for me. Now, God put it in my life in a certain time when I was as desperate can be. It was following the loss of my dad tragically in 2020. I already had enough on my plate. I had enough misery going on. I was overwhelmed. I'd been to therapists. I'd all the things. It was a brain issue for me. And it is a brain issue for everybody. because brain health should be the number one healing priority before you do anything else. Because if your brain doesn't work right, your life doesn't work right. It runs your body, it runs your occupation, it runs your relationships, it runs how you make decisions on your finances, who you marry, how you raise your kids. Your brain runs the show. And so you want to make sure that your brain holistically is working so that your emotional brain isn't in the driver's seat and that everything is firing on all cylinders and it's balanced and regulated. So it should be the thing that people put their resources and their investment towards, because everything else will fall into place when the brain is working properly. And dare I even say too, you had your little chart up there about the the body, the soul, body, mind, like our physiology, and then the soul, the subconscious. Look there in the green, your mind, your will, and your emotions. That's all part of the brain and the brain's ability to be healthy. And in that part, you have listed conscious and subconscious. Only about 15% of our brain is our conscious thought. All the rest is subconscious, unconscious. That's what drives trauma loops. So if we can interrupt those by training the brain away from it, then the mind works better. The will works better. Your motivation centers are there. Your emotions are more clear. You're not flying off the handle anymore because you're now in a place of safety in your own body and in your own skin and in your own family and in your own home and in your school and in your workplace, because all of that's regulated and it's back online and it makes sense. And it's even better because your commune with and your relationship in your spirit with the Holy Spirit becomes more dialed in and clear than it will ever be before, because now all of the little hamster wheels that are rolling in your mind, in your brain, are back online, they're regulated, and they make sense. And you're going to learn so much about yourself and your own past, and it all makes sense. And I can say this because you asked me about one of my favorite personal testimonies. I'm going to give you my personal testimony. Is my mom will probably never hear this, but when I was around my mom, because my mom has a lot of childhood trauma and she worked in the emergency room when I was in utero. So I, throughout my life, picked up a lot of anxiety because of my mom, like so much. So when I, even as an adult, were around her and I moved away, got married, whatever, I had to medicate to be around her. I had to take Xanax to be around my mom. I had to medicate. Then I got to the place after training that I could start to tolerate her. And I didn't have to take the medication because I ran so many brain training sessions on their optimal system that I began to tolerate my mom. Do you know now, years later, and my mom needs me more than ever because she's elderly and she has a lot of issues and a lot of what my PTSD was medically related. Like I have to do everything for my mom now. And I'm not a trained nurse, but I've done all the things. I'm in a place where I appreciate her. I went from, medicate, tolerate to appreciate because I was able to heal my brain. And when you can heal your brain, all those relationships that you've struggled with in your life, whether your mother was a narcissist or you were abused by so-and-so, when your brain can interrupt those patterns and your nervous system can feel safe and trust you, you can find a way to love those people that you have never been able to put up with or be in the same room with. And so it's a powerful, transformative tool for you just to be able to interact with the people that have. I had a lady in Bible study say this once. My mom doesn't just push my buttons, she installed them.
Wow.
I could really relate to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a big transformation for me. And as far as other testimonies go, like I've had the sweetest young lady. This was early on. She had come in. They almost had to carry her. Like she couldn't come by herself because she couldn't drive. She was very, very, very sick. She did a lot of brain training. But, I do other things too besides neurofeedback. I do functional testing and I ask questions about when did you hit your head? Or did you test your house for mold? So, peeling back those layers, finding the assault or the exposure, whether it's an emotional trauma or it's an actual physical pathogen, to remove those. And while you're removing them, to be doing the training. Because anytime like you mentioned Herxheimer reaction, anytime anybody goes into any type of a detox, it pushes the body, right? It can
Yeah.
overwhelm your system. Why does it overwhelm your system? Because your body is ready to let go of the crud, all of the oxidative stress hits the bloodstream and your histamine levels go up, and it can feel like panic and anxiety because they're kind of the same. When you have overwhelm, whether it's emotional or physical, you can feel anxious, and that's what happens when you're detoxing. So whether you're doing an emotional detox or an actual physical detox, whether you're on a parasite cleanse or whatever, if you can train the brain with neurooptimal to support it, to help it be adaptive and flexible and resilient, all of it gets easier. So it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Other testimony, parents with kids rewire so much faster because their synapses are firing quickly and their brains are developing. I think because when you're developing, when you're really 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 young, your primal brain is your cerebellum, and then you develop into your emotional brain, and then the higher levels of your brain where this part, like Dr. Amen says this too, and I agree that parents should be allowed to be their children's prefrontal cortex until they're in their 20s, because that part of the brain doesn't develop. That's why they make really dumb decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But in our culture, that's not 18, you're done,
No.
or whatever. But in other cultures, you are listening to elderly people and other people in other generations. And do you know they have so much less stress? Because we're pushing ourselves to be in areas and make decisions when we're not fully developed to have the goods to do it. So that's why it's really important to advocate for your kids and help support them. And when they're going through the dark ages of middle school, it's that way. I don't care if you're a kid that's had every special thing handed to you on a silver platter, or you've been a kid that's had a lifetime of neglect. When you hit middle school, it's not so much the conditions that make that developmental time hard, it's brain development. It all comes down to neuroscience. And so brain health and feeding the brain and taking care of it is number one. I don't care where you're from or who you are. It should be the
Yeah.
first thing you do.
It reminds me, I firmly believe in chiropractic. Again, it changed my other son's life drastically, so much so that I actually wanted to be a chiropractor and started pursuing school for chiropractic.
Nice.
But as a single mom, I
Mm.
couldn't handle it all on my own. But I worked for many chiropractors, and one of the things that I would explain to people was that your brain is like the world wide web. All the information is coming from it, and it's communicating it to the rest of your body. And so it really is, I mean, yes, you need your heart, but yes, you need your brain, and they're both equally important. And they really are responsible for so much. And I think that incorporating this along with the word of God and believing and receiving and allowing the word to renew your mind, but sometimes you can't even allow that to happen because of trauma, because of things. And so I think it's
Mm-hmm.
a great tool. And as we wrap up, why don't you share, what can people, let's say I have someone who comes to me and says, I'm really, really struggling with being able to function in, let's say, large crowds, go to church. I just want to go to church. My son
Right.
couldn't do that. He would try,
Mm-hmm.
we would
Mm-hmm.
go, and he would go sit in the bathroom for the entire
Mm-hmm.
service.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
and so what would you say to someone? One, how do they find you? Two, how long will it take for them to notice a change? What should they expect from for someone who needs help specifically with anxiety in, let's just say, large crowds? Let's say that's the only time they're
Mhm.
experiencing it. What would that look
Yeah,
like for them?
and that's very common, and that was me because the lights, the sound, the smoke at church, people's perfumes put me into
Yeah.
further overwhelm. So I understand that it's a stress response, and it is, again, it's your limbic system calling out that you're not feeling safe. So
Yeah.
that's tough because then you beat yourself up. I love you,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. Why can't I come and fellowship with other believers?
Yeah.
So, and that pushes the stress response more. Typically, depending on what your situation is, everybody is a little bit different, but they usually say between 12 to 15 sessions of training, you notice your first shift. Some people are sooner than that. Some people require more. I was not your average bear, and I had to train every day from like the end of June until mid-September before I could really significantly tell that I could almost engage. I was engaging life as a normal person again. I bought a plane ticket. I got on a flight. I went on a road trip. I did hard things, what people don't bat an eyelash at. For somebody who couldn't get her groceries, that was a
Yes.
major shift for me. So sleep is one of the first things people notice gets better and improves. And that's absolutely paramount for our body's cellular processes to repair and to replenish. And if you don't get sleep, you can't make good decisions and your
Mm-hmm.
emotions are all over the place. That's very important. Um, to get in touch with me, do you want my email? Do that?
Or do they go to your website? And
Yeah, they could
also,
do a website. Yeah, I have a couple of different websites. I'm trying to get them all housed under one place. If you're local in Central Florida, you can go to harmonyneurofeedback.com. But my online coaching website is mindrenewalmethod.com. And so I can help people. If I can't help you, I can at least connect you with a network of people that can, and just help you add tools to your toolkit. Because do I think what I do is the silver bullet cure? No, I think it's a tool in the toolbox, and it's something that the Lord showed me. And before I even bought my own system, I prayed about it for 2 years because it was a high ticket item. To buy your own system, they're 10 grand US dollars. They're expensive. But if you add up all your therapy and all the things that you're doing, and then I ended up using the system to pay myself back by offering it to other people. And I help people all the time globally do that because I now work for the manufacturers because I am such a believer in what they do. It's the man who developed it actually had a divine download in high school. He has 3 PhDs. He's elderly now, but you cannot tell me that that wasn't the Lord gifting him something. And the whole mission of our company at Zengar Institute is simple: to relieve suffering. And so it doesn't matter what your condition is. It doesn't matter what your trauma has been. You can train the brain to repair the nervous system and how it views life and safety and the goodness of God. Honestly, when you're well, you can, this is how people know that they're healed, because I know a lot of people that you pray for, they want to be free. They want to be free from the dark thoughts. They want to be free from the shame. They want to be free from the depression that is just so heavy that does not go away. You know what? Clinical depression is not just a sad mood. It's a physiological issue where your neurochemicals are not firing properly and the brain is in overwhelm. And according to polyvagal theory, it's when you're done being an anxious fight or flight. And some days you might be really depressed and other days you might be hyper anxious. That was me because my nervous system didn't know how to regulate from moment to moment. So if you can help the brain to see where it needs to self-correct, that system allows for it by interrupting those persistent, consistent cortical patterns. And it's a simple process. You just listen to music. It's plug and play. Reach out to me. I'd love to help you connect in some way. And I'm just so grateful that you have this community, Jennifer, for people to reach out to you. You have a Bible study Thursday. I think that's awesome. and you
Mhm.
do prayer ministry and deliverance ministry. And thank God for him putting this, because I don't even know if you had this going when I first met you. I love
No,
to see
no.
what the Lord's
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I was trained in a long time ago, and I did it, in person. But, the Lord has done so much in my life that really I'm called to help people find hope and heal.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
to me,
same.
he has done that so much in my life that that is the call on my life. And there are all different ways that that happens. But that the thing that I experience the most, what's most common in almost every session, if not 100% of the time, is a lack of worthiness, which is the
Mm,
opposite of your true identity. And it
mm-hmm.
happens for all different reasons. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that God gave his son for us to live in the identity that Jesus paid for. And if we value ourselves enough, then we will go and use the resources that he has given us. And I want people to know, I'm going to put in Marley's links to her website in the description for this video. I'm also going to add it to my website so that it's easy to find. My website is jennifermunson.org. I will add her information there so that you could contact her. And I just want to make it clear that people do not need to be here in Brevard County, Florida, in order to connect with Marley. She can help people regardless of where you are, regardless of what
Mm-hmm.
your needs are. And if she doesn't have the resources, she will help you find the resources that are local to you if that's the option that's best for you. So,
Mm-hmm.
Marley, thank you so much for
Mm.
being my number one first guest on my show. And I feel like the Lord will have us continue to connect, and probably, if depending on the feedback and the questions we have, we'll probably have you back on, and maybe even bring on a client or two of mine that have used this resource and seen it make a really big difference in their life and in their family's life. And I also want to share one more thing, that when I rented the machine, that machine is available to be used by anyone in the household. So, yes, I
Mm-hmm.
got it for my son and the immediate need that he had, but it helped way more than that initial thought of suicide. It helped way more than that. And I used it as well. And so it is, when you look at going into a clinic and having a session, that session's for one person, and then the machine when you bring it home is
Mm-hmm.
for everyone. So it's an option for everyone. It's
Yep.
great for everyone. And so any closing words you have for our viewers?
Wow. You always put me on the spot. I've had a few podcasters do that to me before. I just want to encourage everybody that's listening that having the mind of Christ can feel challenging if your brain is not working. So it's very important to just address your brain health, because the Lord's put everything in front of us to make those choices, and some of us aren't given those choices because there's so many things that are handed to us that we have to struggle through. And not to feel bad about where we're at, because there's so much science out there right now, but we just know, and I see it all the time, that people are able to transform because of things like neuroplasticity, and that you aren't hardwired, that the Lord literally has a way out, and you can have a renewed mind and the mind of Christ when everything comes back online. So use prayer, use God's word, use tools to help rewire your brain, because you're not stuck with the brain you have. And that when you have a better brain, you do have a better life. That's absolutely true.
What a great closing remark. That's perfect. Well, thank you so much, Marley. I hope
Thank you.
everyone is blessed by this session, and I hope that you share it with those that need help, that need hope again, because there's so much available, and there's so much more that
Mhm.
God has for you. And we pray that you experience the hope and healing that Jesus' blood has paid for. We will see you next time.